Hey guys, it's Rob here with another Diablo 3 build video for you guys today. In this video, I will be covering a Whirlwind Barbarian. Before I get too far into this, I do want to mention I have a little bit of a different layout with my video, as you can probably tell for yourself, so be sure to let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into the video for you guys so you can get into the actual build itself. In this video, I will be covering the gear, legendary gems, skills, ruins, passives, paragon point distribution, and cubed items for this build. First thing I'm going to start with is going to be the skills. For my left click, I have Battle Rage Bloodshed. I like having this on my left click. You may see other people run slightly different variations of this setup, but I just personally like keeping my Battle Rage on my left click because it's a once every 2 minutes skill. You are only going to have to pop this every 2 minutes, and once you have it, it's out of the way, and you just don't have to worry about it. So I like having it on my left click. And on my right click, I will have Whirlwind Blood Funnel. I like holding down my right click to Whirlwind, but that's just me. You could easily swap these around and run Whirlwind on your left click, but it just feels more natural for me to have mine on my right click. Now, more about the actual skill itself. We are using Blood Funnel here for the actual life return, because critical hits have a chance to restore 1% of your max life. This is going to be really nice for sustainability because you don't have a whole lot of life return with this build, and with this playstyle you are naturally going to be taking damage because there's no real way to avoid it, because you're going to basically just whirlwind straight through mobs and they're going to hit you. This is going to give you, like I said, some form of sustainability and life return. The next skill is going to be Ignore Pain Iron Hide. Iron Hide for the increased skill duration. The next skill is Warcry Impunity. Pretty basic, really commonly used amongst barbarians. The third key is going to be Threatening Shout, Demoralize. Now this one might be a little bit different from what you're used to seeing. A lot of people run or have ran Falter in the past for the increased 25% weapon damage or increased damage on enemies, which is still a very viable route to go. But Demoralize is actually going to change it over to being an actual taunt for the affected area. Affected enemies also are taunted to attack you for 4 seconds. Now there's multiple applications for this skill. What you can do is you can taunt enemies and have them follow you and walk into your tornadoes for you, which is really nice. You can kite things and not really let them damage you and force them to walk into your damage, or you can use it to kite one elite to another elite and round them up into a more convenient group for you. Or another example is you could move a group of enemies into a more open room so you have a better place to burn them down at. This is a very situational skill that you can actually make tons of different uses for, but that's kind of up to you to decide how you want to use it. That's what I like about it. It's pretty flexible, and you can basically just use it to set yourself up for an easier fight. Next skill is going to be Wrath the Berserker Insanity. This is also a pretty commonly used skill. Everybody usually knows what this one does. It gives you an additional crit chance, attack speed, dodge, movement speed, and with the Insanity rune, it's going to give you increased damage as well. This is a really big cooldown skill you're going to want to make sure you have up during elite fights or any intense density. Ideally, you're going to want to have this skill up at all times, basically. With enough density, you're going to actually be able to sustain this pretty much all the time, but if the density is on the lacking side, it's going to be kind of difficult to keep this up, but that shouldn't be an issue if you're outside of density. But once you get back into the density, keeping this up should be no problem whatsoever. With this skill, you're going to be burning things down considerably faster and just going to be getting around a lot faster, and you'll survive even better. Moving on to the passives, my first passive is Berserker Rage for an additional 25% damage when you are near maximum fury. Next passive is Ruthless. 40% additional damage to enemies below 30% health. This is really nice for pushing Rift Guardians when you are pushing the timer really close. Once they get to a lower health, they are actually going to melt faster with this skill. Really awesome skill to have when you're pushing greater rifts. Third passive is going to be Rampage. It's going to increase your strength by 1% for 8 seconds after killing an enemy or even assisting in a kill of an enemy. This effect will stack up to 25 times. This is going to give you extra damage and a little bit of extra survivability as well, being as how strength will give you armor. Last but definitely not least, passive will be Boon of Bolcathos. This is going to give you 30 seconds off the cooldown of Wrath of the Berserker. This is going to be really nice for keeping up your skill, but we're going to get into that more later once we touch on the gear. You may already know what I'm referring to. Going to go ahead and move on to the, let's start with Paragon point distribution actually. For the core page, you're going to want to max out your movement speed, get yourself up to 25% movement speed, whatever you need. So if you have some on your boots, take that plus a little bit on your core stats to get to 25% movement speed, because that is the maximum movement speed, as you may probably already know. Then after you get to your 25%, you're going to want to dump the rest of your points into strength. For the offensive page, you're going to want to focus on cooldown reduction, because at the moment this is going to be your highest priority, because you're going to want cooldown reduction to keep your skills up at all times. So you're going to want to max out your cooldown reduction first. Then you're going to want to move on to crit hit chance, crit damage, and then attack speed. Defense, you're going to want to focus on resist all, life, armor, life regen. Then utility, I suggest starting out with area damage, life per hit, resource cost reduction, and then gold find. If you are needing more survivability, you can definitely start focusing on life per hit first if you need the increased life return. But if you want to crank out more damage, focus on your area damage. That's just more situational, depends on where your gear level is at and what you need out of it. But if you're going to be pushing, area damage is king. We're going to go ahead and move on to the gear section of it next. For the helmet, we are obviously going to be using a helm of the waist or a set helm. An ideal roll on this would be something along the lines of strength, crit, whirlwind damage, and then a secondary of some form of resist, maybe arcane or poison or whatever. Some form of resist at least. So strength, crit, whirlwind, secondary, resist. Shoulders are going to be obviously set shoulders. An ideal roll on this is going to be strength, a survivability stat such as vitality or resist, and then cooldown reduction, and area damage. As you can see, I didn't get an exactly ideal roll. That's why I haven't augmented this yet. Mine's just straight up survivability, so I could definitely get some improvement there. But again, to go over the stat priorities, strength, survivability stat of some form, cooldown reduction, and area damage. Next piece is going to be the gauntlets of waist or set gloves. Ideal roll on this is going to be strength, crit damage, crit chance, and cooldown reduction or area damage. If you need the cooldown reduction, focus on cooldown reduction. If you're at a decent enough cooldown reduction, get area damage. Before I move on any further, I suggest shooting a good goal to shoot for would be 50% cooldown reduction. I seem to have a pretty good time with 50% cooldown reduction, keeping my skills up. If you hit that, then you can definitely roll area damage on your gloves. Next piece is going to be the set chest. An ideal roll on this is going to be something along the lines of strength, vitality, resist. As you can see on mine, I got a pretty decent roll. The next piece is going to be the Nemesis bracers for your bracer slot. On this one, you're going to want to have elemental damage, which is physical, strength, vitality, crit, and then a secondary resist, which I do not have, but that would be ideal. For the belt, you're going to be wanting to shoot for the Pride of Cassius. I actually really like my roll, so I suggest trying to get something along these lines. Strength, vitality, resist, armor, and then a secondary chance to freeze on hit. I just really like that because it's free crowd control. This is, and I've actually noticed it on occasion. It actually works out quite well for me, so if you can get something like this, I suggest trying for it. And you also want to get a maximum 6 seconds on the ignore pain duration, because this increases the ignore pain duration up to 6 seconds. It can roll all the way down to 4. So ideally you want a 6 on that. For the legs, we are going to want set legs. An ideal roll on this would be strength, vitality, resist. But as you can see, I have strength, vitality, armor, secondary resist, which is perfectly fine. For ring number 1, we have Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. On this, you're going to want to shoot for something along the lines of attack speed, crit chance, cooldown reduction. Or you could swap out the crit chance for area damage. Either way, you definitely want to keep your cooldown reduction on that, though. Like I said before, cooldown reduction is king in this build. It is going to make a huge difference. So preferably, you want an 8% cooldown reduction on your Ring of the Zodiac. And then a secondary resist would also be nice. Ring number 2 will be Convention of Elements. An ideal roll on this as well will be crit damage, crit chance, and probably area damage or cooldown reduction. Again, once you get to your 50% cooldown reduction, you can focus a little more on the area damage. Boots are going to be set boots. Strength, vitality, resist, whirlwind damage. 15% of course. Before we move into the weapons, I do want to touch on the amulet. I skipped that because I was trying to save that kind of for last. On the neck or amulet, you're going to want a Hellfire amulet with one of those passives that I mentioned before. Mine has Weapon Master passive, which worked out really well. An ideal-ish roll would be Strength, crit damage, crit chance, secondary resist, and obviously a socket. I got something relatively close to that, so I'm going to have to make do with that, and I went ahead and augmented mine. But again, before I get any further, it is Strength, crit damage, crit chance, secondary resist, and a socket. That would be relatively an ideal roll. I know it's kind of hard to get a secondary resist with all of those ideal rolls, but that is what you should kind of shoot for if you can. I know Hellfire amulets can be a little bit of a pain in the ass to get. At least an ideal one, ancient, and with a good passive. Moving on, weapon number 1 is going to be Bolcathos Solemn Vow. An ideal roll on this is going to be obviously high damage, strength, cooldown reduction, and area damage. I got vitality on mine, which I'm not going to complain about, but I would have preferred to swap that out for area damage. And then obviously we're going to want a socket, but that goes unsaid. Weapon number 2 is going to be Bolcathos Warrior's Blood. On this, you're going to want something as well similar, strength, area damage, and cooldown reduction, as well as a socket. Again, same situation. I got a vitality roll on it, but I'm not going to complain because I got a really high 900 vitality. Not going to complain about that. I would prefer to get an area damage because it'll just help me destroy stuff in a much more efficient manner. But again, not going to complain. That's good. I would definitely like to swap that out for area damage at some point in time, though. Going to go ahead and move on into the cubed items for this build. As you can see at the bottom of the video, I actually have a little display down there. The first item in the cube is going to be the Furnace. This is going to give you an additional 50% damage on elites. This is all around a really good item and a really well-known item that's used in tons of other builds. There isn't really any flexibility on this. It's just straight up extra damage on elites. That's a really awesome selection for the weapon slot. The next one for your armor slot is going to be the Mantle of Channeling. While channeling your Whirlwind skill, you are going to do 25% additional damage and take 25% reduced damage. So this is going to increase your damage output while increasing your toughness. This is a really good balance between the two. It's 25% on both ends. The third slot, the Jewelry slot, is going to be the Skull Grasp. This is going to increase your Whirlwind damage by 300%. That is a large increase. You're going to really notice this the first time you equip this in the cube. The 300% is going to be very substantial and immediately noticeable. The last thing I'm going to touch on in this video is going to be the legendary gems. There is a little bit of variation with this, so I'm going to touch on that a little bit. The first legendary gem I'm going to be using is Pain Enhancer for the extra damage output it has. This one's a little bit flexible with the fact that you can swap this out for the Swiftness gem. The Swiftness gem is going to give you an extra attack speed, dodge chance, and most importantly, cooldown reduction. So if you are on the lacking side on cooldown reduction, you can swap out your Pain Enhancer and get the extra cooldown reduction in order to assist your Ignore Pain and your Wrath Berserker uptime. So once you get to the point to where you are around 50% or so, you will want to swap out your Swiftness gem and pop back in the Pain Enhancer. But until then, Swiftness gem is still a very viable route to go. Now the other two gems don't have a whole lot of flexibility. You probably already know what these are going to be. But the second one is Bane of the Stricken for the additional damage on the bosses and the additional stacked damage on attack. That's just all around great for pushing those higher health mobs. So that's not really flexible there, obviously. And the last gem is going to be Bane of the Trapped for the additional damage on any enemies that are within the affected aura of 15 yards. So, like I said, the only one that's really interchangeable or that I see people swapping in and out is the Pain Enhancer for the Swiftness gem. But other than that, once you get to the appropriate gear level and the cooldown reduction level, you'll definitely want to be swapping that back out for the Pain Enhancer. That's about all I got for the build portion of this video, but before I go, I do want to mention I have been doing a lot of live streaming, as some of you have seen, and I'm going to be setting up a actual scheduled routine and a set schedule. Generally, what the routine or schedule is at the moment is my streaming goes from Wednesday until Saturday. about 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. Central Time. Sometimes a little bit sooner. Sometimes I'll be on around 3 o'clock. Sometimes I'll get off a little sooner. Sometimes I'll get off around 8 o'clock. Now, if you want to see an actual set, solid schedule, go down in the description below and check out my Facebook and go give me a like over there, because I actually post a lot more information over there, and you have a lot more direct access to that kind of information. So be sure to go down there, like my Facebook page, follow me on there. I post a lot of other stuff too from time to time. I have some other gaming stuff I'd like to share, and I'd just like to have some people to chat with and connect with. So if you want, go down there, like my Facebook page, and if you're not already, subscribe to my channel. That's about all I got for today's video, guys. I'm a lot of things to say. Have a nice day.